Venus, the brightest object in our skies besides the Sun and the Moon. Our celestial neighbour can be a mere 24 million miles away at its closest, but many people will, without fail, mistake Venus for a UFO or an intruder into our solar system. As you can see from the videos I've done already, imagery from stereo is often used as evidence of the bizarre. But a few minutes of research will clear things right up, and that's a few minutes of research on the very same site that this imagery can be freely downloaded from too. That's how little research Nibiru believers do on their own claims. Here is some recent footage that has been floating around in a few videos. Proponents say all manner of things, how it could not be Venus because of the way it moves, how it must be emitting something because of the strange shapes that are visible, how its position means it's only visible to people in Antarctica even. But what do we actually know of this footage? Firstly, importantly, we need to make sure of which data we're looking at. We're looking at the HI-1 instrument on the Stereo B satellite for early July this year. We know this because the information is stamped into each and every image, and it helps us understand where we are in space and time and what we're looking at. Using this information, that some people strangely have cropped out of their videos, and others have erroneously referred to as data from the SOHO satellite, we can have a look at any solar system map that you want to use to get our bearings. Many of you know that I use Celestia, so let's have a look. We know the orbits of the individual stereo satellites. Stereo B, being the behind satellite, puts our position in space in this area here. We also know that the HI-1 instrument, the heliospheric imager, looks at the space between the Sun and the Earth, the Sun sitting just outside its field of view, as shown here. We can already see in Celestia that Venus is in the right place to be in view for this time, and we can confirm this information using a number of resources on the Stereo website. With a program like Celestia, we can check the orbits of the planets at any speed we want. The object in the imagery moves from left to right, so for this to be Venus, Venus in Celestia must move from left to right relative to the view of Stereo B. It does. Stereo, of course, consists of two satellites, and Stereo A is also in a position where Venus is in view of its HI-1 instrument. And so for this to be Venus in the Stereo A footage, where the object moves from right to left, Venus must move right to left in Celestia relative to Stereo A, and again it does. So we know we have Venus in our sights. It's where we expect it to be, it's moving how we expect it to move, there's nothing unusual here. So why the strange emissions, the circles of light? The simple answer is internal reflections, light bouncing around the instruments and off the satellites themselves. You can find more information on this page. These are known artifacts. They've occurred in the past, they will occur in the future. There is nothing abnormal about them. Bright light source, delicate optics, internal reflections. A lens flare, if you will. What saddens me is that this information is explained on the Stereo website itself, a few clicks away from the latest imagery. And there's more information over at the Sungrazer site. All the resources you need are on these sites, and there are people who can answer any questions you have about the imagery. And yet people post the imagery to YouTube and declare all this information to be wrong, and for their false information about it being Nibiru to be believed instead. Nibiru proponents may sound like they know what they're talking about, but in cases like these it only takes a few minutes to prove them wrong, using resources that anybody can have access to. Every link I can think of that will help you out is in the description here. If you see footage like this on YouTube, check out these sources before coming to a conclusion. If you're feeling nice, pass them on to whoever made the videos. Help them out. Explain why it isn't an unusual site. Point them in the right direction for additional information. For if the proponents of the strange claims haven't used these links themselves, then they're probably talking nonsense.
In other words, it's one thing to pile up a bunch of evidence, go, look, I have this radical new idea, here's my arguments in support of it. Okay, interesting, but what are the counter arguments? Have you thought about that? Have you thought, what else could be explaining this? Because if you don't do it, somebody else will, usually with great glee, in a published public forum.